It's Cameron Ricks here. This is going to be the next installment of Career Exploration podcast for SimRated. And today we are fortunate enough to have Devin Ricks, and you may recognize that name because we share the last name. And so Devin is my sister. We are a healthcare family, and I was talking to her a few weeks ago about what she does and how engaged she was in being a nurse. And it just made me think that there's no one better to interview than her. So Devin, if you would, please just tell us your name and what you do for a living and who you work for.
Yeah, so I'm Devin Ricks, and I am a registered nurse. And most recently, I am now a certified diabetes care and education specialist. And I work for Sutter here in Northern California.
And how many years have you worked with them for?
For Sutter, my gosh, I think it's been over 12 years now. And I work in the home health realm, which I really love. But a nurse for about over 15, almost 16 years.
Cool. So this podcast is mostly watched by people who are interested in healthcare and exploring and trying to figure out what they want to do and how they get there. So if you could just kind of give us a little bit of a background, like going way back, like go back to like high school and take us to today. Like what was your path that, because no one's path is, right, most people's path is not direct. It's usually a little bit circuitous and you try this and that. If you can
Right.
kind of like walk us through from early days till now, what brought you to your current job?
Well, I out of high school, I went right to college. And honestly, I had no clue really what I wanted to do. I was into the environment. I liked being out in nature. And so I started down the environmental science path and then took a detour, moved to Tahoe to do the whole ski bum summers in Tahoe and went down that route. And then did end up going back to UC Santa Cruz, where I did get my environmental studies degree, bachelor's in environmental studies, and worked in the state parks and did outdoor education for a few years up in Tahoe. And then a very smart family member let me know that one day making money might be important and that job security, having a solid career was something I should look into. And he suggested I go into nursing because he was a nurse and heading on his way to becoming a doctor. Some of the best advice I've ever received. So I took that advice and went back to school. And because I already had a bachelor's, I was able to take an accelerated RN, get my degree accelerated through UNR down in Reno. And once I had graduated with my RN license, I began nursing in the ICU.
And then what happened?
And then I was an ICU nurse for a few years and went actually off into travel nursing and travel nursed through Colorado for a couple years and really loved that. That was a lot of fun. And when I moved back to California, I just knew I didn't want to have to do a commute for my job. And I was looking for ICU positions. And where I live in Northern California is a very small community, one hospital. There weren't any ICU jobs open. And I kept getting this home health job posting coming to my email all the time. And I had never even considered doing home health. It did not sound interesting or fun to me at all. But I just kept finding these and I was like, well, I need a job. I might as well just try this and at least interview, see if I'll even get an interview. And sure enough, I interviewed and I fell in love with the staff that was interviewing me, and they just seemed so relaxed and the job seemed really dynamic and interesting. And so I took the position and I have loved it ever since.
Awesome. Hold on, I'm going to change this view a little bit and see if that's better. That's amazing. So, and I love hearing that story because, I think that most people, they just it's really hard to figure out what you want to do, and you try different things until you find being a nurse. But um, you know, I also like the fact that, within nursing, and some of the people who have watched this podcast know I'm a registered nurse as well, that there's so much you can do, right? I mean, you can do, there's like, I mean, the amount of different types of nurses is unbelievable. Going from we did acute care, critical care nursing in the intensive care unit to home health.
Yeah.
Now they're just totally, which is more primary care, and they're just totally different ends of the spectrum, and there's everything in between.
Yeah. And I enjoyed I've enjoyed everything I've done,
Yeah.
actually. And I traveled nurse, which was it's like that's a whole nother awesome thing you can do with it.
Yeah,
Which
touch a little bit on that, like what exactly travel nursing is, because I think that might interest people.
yeah, so I signed up with a travel company. There's many of them out there, and you sign on. Generally, there's a bonus to start working, which is always nice. And then you're able to pick a region. I wanted to see Colorado, and so Denver, of course, has a ton of hospitals, and they found me wherever there was a need, they would put me. And so I worked at I think four different hospitals when I was in Colorado, and it was 3 month, 3 month kind of assignments. But oftentimes they would keep you on for another 3 months or another 3 months. And I ultimately, the last hospital I worked, I went on just as a full time employee and stayed there for almost a year before moving back to California. Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool. I think that flexibility and be able and that's one thing that's really amazing about being a nurse is you can do so many things, including travel nursing, which is incredible. And then you're currently, so if you could tell us a little bit about like your current job, because I know you, and what kind of brought you from being a home health nurse into being what's it called, a diabetes specialist?
Yeah, so it used to be called a CDE, Certified Diabetes Educator, which was much easier to say. But now, recently, they changed it to a Certified Diabetes Care and Education Specialist, a CDCES. Um, well, I actually, after having my daughter, I had gestational diabetes, and after having my daughter, it really never cleared up. So I was dealing with basically being a type 2 diabetic and realized how challenging it is. And to be honest, that I was working with patients who had diabetes and I didn't really know much about it. I mean, I kind of knew the basic stuff, but in home health, we're seeing so many patients with just the variety is so wide. It's that but then once I was dealing with the disease myself, I thought, oh my gosh, this is really challenging. And there's so much more education that needs to happen for these people to live with this disease and work with it and thrive. So I started doing more research, and our company needed somebody. And so I took the time to study a lot. The test was pretty challenging, and took the test and passed, thankfully. And now I've been doing it. And I think at this point, being a CDE, diabetes educator, has been the most rewarding part of my career. I feel like I have a really profound effect and on these patients, and the amount of education that takes place and the changes that we see, the improvements in their life and their health in general. It's pretty awesome.
Cool. And like, what sort of like, what kind of patient group, who do you work with in general? What are your patients like?
So, as a home health nurse or as a diabetes educator?
Maybe as a diabetes educator.
So as a diabetes educator, it's for the most part, I do work with some women who have gestational. That's a small percentage, but most of them are older folks, the geriatric, group that have diabetes. Because of where I live, we also have a lot of like Latin culture, and so they are predisposed a bit to having higher numbers of diabetes. So I work with them. Um, yeah.
It's
So
also helpful that, I mean, you spent how long in Chile? You spent a year in Chile, so you're fluent in Spanish. So that's also been helpful. Can you just like
yeah,
speak to that briefly?
yeah. So I did. I lived in Chile for a year and also Costa Rica for a year. So my Spanish is good,
Mhm.
um, and that has been really helpful. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think that the patients, really the Spanish speaking patients, really appreciate that. And we just get so much further with them
yeah.
because the communication is so good. They feel like I can understand everything. And even if I have trouble communicating something, generally there's a family member in the house that speaks English or English and Spanish, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've found over the years too. I mean, I didn't travel like you did, but I've become pretty proficient in my medical Spanish, and it's been very helpful, just in
It-
taking care of those patients.
yeah.
Um, what would you say, like, as a diabetes educator, or are you primarily doing that, or are you doing some home health as well?
Well, now it's a combo, but they try to keep me. We have so many diabetics. I mean, I it's like that was another thing I kind of didn't realize how virtually every patient who has like heart failure also is diabetic.
Yeah, right,
So
exactly.
it's sort of a combo. Um, but yeah, I mean, in terms of if people are interested in what a home health nurse does, we do it all. So
Yeah,
we access, people are coming home much more sick these days. They're going into the hospital, like sometimes like for a new joint, they're turning around and coming home the same day. So we're expected to be out there to like, be assessing pain and GI and their incisions and getting PT out to them like very next day. People are coming home with PIC lines, IV infusions, ports. So we're doing accessing, deaccessing ports and drawing labs off of all the different lines, PIC line dressing changes, all that kind of thing. We're obviously dealing with Foley catheters, suprapubics, changing all those. Lots of wound care, wound vacs. So a lot of wound care at home and a lot of just education. The education piece at home is huge because people will go into the hospital, they're sick, and they'll come out with like 3 new diagnoses and like a whole list of new medication that they need to be educated on.
yeah.
And and that's what we do.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, so, I mean, it's clear that you make a huge impact, on your patients, and that's amazing. The home health thing, I wasn't familiar with it, but I've been very impressed upon how much you do and what an impact you have, and how much, as a physician, you don't have that connection with the patient you have as a nurse, and specifically as a home health nurse in their homes, getting to know them personally, educating them, and making sure that that they're doing okay, and that they're taking the right medication, and their labs are drawn, and all that stuff. I think it's
Yeah.
it's amazing. And along those lines, what would be like a normal like day in your life or your job?
Yeah. So we start from home, which is another really cool thing about our job. We have, tablets that have all the charts. And so we're usually given a schedule the evening before. So I wake up and I've called my patients the night prior to set up my day. I start from home. I go out, just line up my patients and I see everybody. Um, and then chart in between. And then at the end of the day, I come home and wrap up my charting. So it's actually for my life, it's been wonderful. It's so
Yeah.
flexible. There's a lot of autonomy, which I really appreciate. Um, yeah, so that's sort of how the day rolls.
And I think, that you may have just answered. I mean, I mean, is that the best part of the job? Like the kind of you said, the autonomy and the flexibility, would you say? Or what I mean, clearly you love the patient care, but what would you say is your favorite part of the job?
Yeah, I think the autonomy, I like that. I like and the flexibility. I have a little one, a 4-year-old, and being able to start from home, set up my day, whereas I'm heading this way to drop her off at preschool, and then I can hit my next patient closest to her and kind of work across the county and come back. Um, and there's sometimes it's awesome. There's like gaps in the day. Sometimes not everybody can be seen in a kind of a sequence. And if I have an hour in between, I can grocery shop and bring it home and then
Yeah.
head back out and see my next patient or squeeze in a dentist appointment or, and that's all fine and good, as long as you're getting all your patients seen.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. I think that flexibility is something that, is very appealing to a lot of people, especially people who have families, who have other responsibilities. Being able to set your own schedule, that's really nice. I mean, I think that's a really big job satisfier, for everyone.
Agreed. You just feel, yeah, you feel like you have a little wiggle room. It's not like a punch in, you're there. in the grind, there's a little flexibility and it's really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think I can see that. What would you say your least favorite part of your job is?
Um, hmm. I will admit, okay, the county I'm in it's a coastal city, and so most pretty affluent, but there are some houses you go into that are pretty gross. So I
Mhm.
think for home health, it's pretty uncommon. It's not the
Yeah.
usual, but occasionally you have to go into a home like where they're smoking in the home, or they have a lot of pets, or
Mhm.
there's so occasionally, you just go in, you get it done, and
Mhm.
I think that's probably the only, and it's not the it's the exception.
Yeah.
It's not the rule. So
I,
yeah.
I think that's I could see where that could be a little bit difficult if it's not really your cup of tea, like the way that they live. But I mean, yeah, it's just part of what we do, I guess. And
No.
and then I lost my train of thought. I was coming up with my next question, which was oh, we're getting near the end of this interview. So um, you know, students or people who are interested in becoming a nurse, what would you what would be your suggestion to them, or what advice would you give them?
Um, I think I would definitely have them consider their personality, and like, really, are they, nursing, like we were saying, there's like so many facets to it. You can probably find almost anything to suit you, but you are working with people, and you do have to you need to be compassionate and
Hmm.
empathetic and caring. And if those don't really, that's just not how you see yourself, it's
Right.
probably not the career for you. But
Right.
um yeah, so to consider your personality and your interests, and know that w- nurses do have to do gross things
Yeah.
sometimes. And if you're really queasy, or don't think blood makes you sick, or the idea of bodily fluids is just too much,
Hmm.
then probably not the career for you. I mean, we're
Yeah.
doing enemas and big wounds, and lots of stuff that a lot of people just can't even handle.
Right.
So
Yeah. No, I
in
think
general, yeah, but in general, there's different things you can do. You don't
I,
have.
I think there's a lot of optionality. I think you're right. But yeah, you do. I mean, that's something that kind of does rule you out if you're not compassionate and you cannot stand uh any the human body and those things, like
Right.
infections, and whether it be like phlegm or like snot or like that
Bad
sort of thing.
smells. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's
yeah,
all
yeah.
there.
It's all there. So you have to kind
Yeah,
of deal with all that. It's just part of the territory.
it is.
Um,
And
yeah,
people are sick, and they're in pain, and they're not always pleasant.
yeah,
And you're gonna have to recognize that, and treat them with respect, and know they're coming probably from not their best place,
right, right.
and and be caring.
And be caring and compassionate. Absolutely, that's
Yeah.
absolutely part of the job, and it can be a challenging part of the job, but it's an important part of it. And I know that you've been doing this for a long time, and you're really good at that. And um, I really want to thank you for taking the time this morning to chat with us and educate like our learners out there who are interested in becoming a registered nurse. And I think they got a combo here where they learned about being a registered nurse and a home health nurse and being a was it registered diabetic.
I know, it's CDCES,
Okay.
Certified Diabetes Care and Education Specialist.
Okay. We'll put
That's
a
a
link.
mouthful.
We'll put a link for everyone in there so they can check that out. But again, thank you for your time, Dev, and
Yeah,
we'll be
thanks.
talking again soon.